This is the most interesting podcast ever.
I'm still waiting to see how this door-to-door salesman's going to sell me on Thanos, our Lord and Savior.
You post your failures on the internet?
No, God, no. And if you do it right, you like open a portal to another dimension.
And it could be even like a hypercube-esque fourth dimensional being that can kind of hop in and out of time.
True AI wouldn't let us know that it deviated.
We became friends in a parking lot.
Hence the name Long Shot Parking Lot.
Drew has informed me that this story is not very fun.
That is not true.
Hello, welcome to the Long Shot Parking Lot. I'm Katie.
I'm Drew.
And today we're going to be continuing our conversation on fundamentalism. If you want to hear the first half of this conversation, you can listen to last week's episode. Okay, so have you ever been like remotely tempted by like wanting to think of things in a more black and white way, or wanting to like adhere more strictly to some sort of religious thing?
No.
No.
I hate black and white.
Yeah. And have you always been that way, like even back in high school and stuff?
No. Because that was actually why I don't really like it. It was my confusion with why some people find math hard. Mm-hmm. Is I'm like, 2 plus 2 is always 4.
Yeah.
2 times 2 is always 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like, math has very black and white rules. Mm-hmm. That was just super easy for me. Mm-hmm. So I understood, like, I guess I enjoyed that part of math.
Yeah.
Like, that was always one of my stronger subjects. But then as I got into more difficult math, like learning that there's like 5 ways to solve the same problem, even though it's math, mm-hmm. and there's, 2 plus 2 is still always 4.
Yeah.
You can look at it as, are you adding 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1? Or are you adding 3 plus 1? Like, because mm-hmm. 2 plus, like, there's all those ways to think about how you can solve it.
Yeah.
Like, that got really interesting to me. And that's kind of when that wasn't my revelation moment. But that's like something that is the only example I can think of something that I believed was black and white. And I liked that it was black and white. Mm-hmm. But then I found out it also was gray. And I'm like, yeah, nah. Mm-hmm. The gray is the shit.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like
It's like, man, if there could just be like one more than 49 shades of gray, I would love it.
Yeah, but there isn't.
There isn't.
Let alone 3 iterations of it.
No.
I have a little bit of because one of the big things is like, well, truth is truth, regardless of,
Your truth is different than my truth.
Well, but sort of. Like, I think that you can see the same thing in different ways. Like, there's the whole elephant thing where, like, if you're feeling its trunk, you think it's one thing, and if you're feeling its leg, you think it's a tree.
Yeah.
But it's an elephant. Mm-hmm. But, like, me feeling just the leg part doesn't mean I'm not seeing the truth. I'm just seeing part of the truth, mm-hmm. or one angle of it or something. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the evangelical argument is, well, it's an elephant.
Well, do you know the similarity between an elephant and a plum?
Half a thing of DNA?
No, they're both gray. Well, except the plum. Thanks. Then that is the first elephant joke on this podcast. Here we go. It's about to get rough.
Yeah, so I do have I was a journalism major. I have mm-hmm. a thing about truth, Mm-hmm. There have been times in my life where people have not, like, believed me, and I'm like, no, I know it's true. Don't try and get me to believe what's not true,
mm-hmm. It sounds like fake news.
Yeah.
Alternative facts.
Yeah, alternative facts. And so, but the thing about that they'll say is that truth is, like, the definition of truth is that it's equal to the original, or it matches the original. So if there's a copy of something, that's like the whatever Latin origins of the word is that it's a copy of something that looks exactly like the original.
It's like a proof.
Yeah.
And the proof is in the truth.
Yeah. So that can only look like one way.
Oh, man. I almost started doing a Bill Cosby joke, and then I was like, no. No.
Yeah. No.
I was going to say something about pudding.
Nope.
Fucking men ruining everything.
Yeah, no.
Bill Cosby
Some of them are okay.
Bill Cosby jokes.
So I just am wondering how you feel like the truth can be. Everyone can have a different truth if, like, kind of not, like, it can't be true. Like, 1 plus 1 plus 1 might be 4, and 2 plus 2 might be 4. But
1 plus 1 plus 1 is not 4, but
you
continue.
know what sorry, I'm kind of sick, you guys. You know what I mean. But it's always 4. Like saying that it's 7 is going to be wrong, you know? So then how do you arrive at truth if we all see truth differently?
If we all see that it's 4, then it doesn't matter if you think it's 1 plus 1 plus 1.
Right. That's a great example I just gave there unintentionally.
Right.
Yeah.
As long as we come to the same truth, it doesn't matter how you get there. So I guess
what
I'm
if
not.
we're coming to different truths, you know?
Then we're not agreeing.
Right. So then how do you know what's true?
In my heart of hearts.
Yeah.
I guess it's hard to think of an example for me. I guess that's where I'm kind of getting lost.
Yeah. I mean, because the thing with evangelicals is that they hold, you know, the word of God or whatever as truth. And so they're like, if anything doesn't match the original, it's false. And so, which is problematic because the original doesn't match the original.
Right.
Like,
I was just going to say, so
that
was going to be my counter argument. Is like, well, your truth isn't true because, you know, what about the 5th book? What about, you know, this? What about this? It's like, I heard this analogy to religion was, if I told you that I threw a baseball like 200 miles an hour, like super fast, fastest ever, you know, you wouldn't believe that. Because like that's kind of physically impossible. But if enough people heard it, maybe like 1 or 2 people would be like, oh shit, yeah, I heard about this guy that threw a pitch 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they kept telling, like, they would tell 3 people and only 1 person would believe it. And then that 1 person would tell 3 people and only 1 person would believe it. And eventually enough people would believe that I threw this pitch, you know, and then you fast forward 100 years down the line, and there's, you know, hundreds of people that believe at one time this one guy threw a pitch at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's religion. It's like, clearly that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it's been passed down so far and mistranslated, like, so how can you say that your truth is true?
Yeah.
How can you prove that your 8th edition Bible is the same as your 1st edition Bible?
Yeah.
Like the AI 1.0, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. So why do you think that what do you think it is that draws people to be like this? Like, do you see in the world like actual belief, or do you see like, I mean, I think a lot of it is about power.
Or why do people believe that it's true? And do you think it's power? I think it's fear.
Yeah. You think it's fear.
I think
What
it's
are they
fear.
afraid of?
Hell, damnation.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like, at one point somebody was like, God is so powerful, he can do bad things. And I was like, well, now I'm afraid of him, so I'm going to do all the good things because he's good.
Yeah.
And he'll like it if I'm good. I don't know.
Yeah. And I do feel like the concept of afterlife is like so like
It's talked about
crazy.
constantly.
Yeah. But it's so crazy already. Like, it's so kind of magic-y already that, like, I feel like people saying, like, oh, there might be a heaven or there might be a hell is not out of the range of, like, what could happen after death, you know, or, like, what would be a natural thing for someone in the Middle Ages to, like, come up with.
So I think that people find comfort in the thought of an afterlife, so they're not afraid of death. And then their way of justifying their afterlife is with this God, this fundamentalist God. They're more afraid of nothing after death than they are afraid of that God.
Yeah.
Which then, in my opinion, doesn't make God.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you shouldn't be afraid of your God, but...
Yeah, but it's like the whole thing is about afterlife. And it's about being like a good person here and now, but mostly it's about getting people to a place where they're marked for heaven when they die, which is just so boring. Okay, so I have a story. A Roman general rolls into town, right? And he says, congratulations. You all are citizens of the Roman Empire, and you get all the privileges and benefits of being a Roman citizen. Your citizenship can't be taken away from you. The only thing is, you get it once you swear your allegiance to me, once you bend the knee. And if you don't, I have some soldiers outside the town, and they're going to burn you alive. But you will, because, you know, you want to be a Roman citizen. So I'll just have ownership of your town, and you'll swear fealty to me, and you'll bend the knee, and you'll be a Roman citizen. Doesn't that sound great? And like, in what story is that guy not the villain? Like,
The
that
Roman
is the
story.
villain.
Yeah.
You know, of every story. They're like, oh, but you want this, so it's fine. But, I mean, we'll kill you if you don't. But you won't do that, right? You know? And there's another version of the story, in the analogy I'm drawing anyway, where the general sends spies ahead of time and knows which families are more likely to submit to him. And so he will go in ahead of time and capture those families and kill them because he knows that they won't submit to him. And then he'll roll in and be like, you're all Roman citizens. I know you'll all bow to me because I've sent my spies ahead of time. And that's there's a split within Christianity which one it is that God does. But either way.
Does he assassinate people, or does he just tell people I'm going to assassinate people? Is
Well,
that the split?
he says, I've chosen you, you know? And so that means there are people he hasn't chosen. But then they would say, well, the people he hasn't chosen are the people who wouldn't believe anyway.
Okay.
You know? So that's how they kind of get around it not being cruel. But when you tell it like it's an actual story, it's still cruel. And I think that once I kind of like came up with that scenario in my head, that's when I was like, oh. So I need to either choose a different God.
So it's critical thinking.
Yeah.
Is the issue that, like, free will and critical thinking, I think, are almost, like, they go hand in hand. They're not synonymous by any means, but, like, if you are saying that I have free will and I'm using that to think critically about this situation and be like, actually, this doesn't sound good. No, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, then you're denying me of my free will. Like, people will reach out to you and they're like, I think this is true, but I don't know why. And it's like, because you haven't been in an environment where they wanted you to think critically. They wanted you to question things. They wanted you to have that internal dialogue of, like, this is wrong, this is right. They just wanted you to accept this is right, this is wrong.
Man, I mean, the power of groupthink is insane.
Oh my God, I hate echo chambers.
I mean, and that's what, like, censorship is. Like, we want to make sure this is an echo chamber, and that any other idea is quickly put to rest.
Right.
You know, I was told by a girl I was living with once. I like disagreed with her in front of the group politically, and she talked to me later and was like, "The Bible says that we should all be of one mind, and so I really would appreciate if you didn't do that in front of people."
That's a prison trick. So one of my uncles used to be a prison guard, and he was like, if at any time you are in the general population, like the prisoners, and you see an inmate and your fellow guard arguing, you always take your guard side, even if you don't agree with him, and then afterwards talk to them about it and say, this is what you did wrong. But you never question them in front of the prisoners. So that's the whole hive mind, like, God says we need to be of one mind, and it's like, well, what if the one mind is wrong?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and I do want to note, I think that there's a version of Christianity that can be drawn from Scripture that is healthy.
Absolutely.
But that's not this. This
Right.
is not
Yeah.
healthy.
No, I understand.
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to agency and power. So whether you're being held over by power or by fear, that's like power over, you know. So the people who like fundamentalism are either because they want the power over the people who are in fear, or because they're in fear because of the people who are overpowering them.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
yeah. And so I guess it just comes down to, I mean, with Thanos and with God and really any of these sorts of fundamentalist ideas. I mean, even if you look at like extremism in other world religions, the person who decides what salvation is, power decides. And so it's never like the people. It's not democratic. It's always that power decides. So
That's a dictator.
yeah. Or a theocracy.
Or an authoritarian.
Yeah. And the thing about evangelicals, it makes me crazy because they talk about, this is America. We want free will, or we want, my rights and whatever. No, you don't. You don't want democracy. Like, you don't want.
Right.
You want authoritarianism, who is benevolent to only your group, you know?
And that's, yeah, sorry. I didn't
No, go
interrupt.
ahead.
No, that's like my biggest thing about like with soccer, like with True North Elite is anytime we have like a conflict come up, people are like get upset. They're like, oh man, like, why are you upset at this thing? Like we're trying our hardest. So I'm like, they're upset because that means we're not doing something as well as we could. So like, if things are going smooth and it's fine, that means we aren't aware that something's wrong. I don't want to get super worried, but I also like, this is just how my brain works, and this is why I do quality assurance. So it's like, I think there's always a way to better ourselves.
Yeah.
There's always a way to evolve. And that's just part of like how I see things. So I encourage people like all the time in our group. I'm like, if you guys have an issue, like, please let me know. Like, I know, and I also want to make sure that you have the right way to represent. Like, talk to me in person. Send me a DM. Post it in the group. Like, let's all talk about it in this group. Or like, any way that you feel comfortable, I want to make myself available. Because I don't want your idea to be shot down by groupthink.
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable talking in front of the large group.
Right.
Like, send me a DM.
Yeah.
And like all that stuff. And I think that's really important is having that, you know, those naysayers, those, you know, that opposition. It also might be because I'm competitive as fuck. And if I'm just constantly winning, then it's boring.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I always win. So like, it's not that boring. But like, if there's no challenge, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. I saw a thing happen in the group I was in where you weren't really allowed to you were only really allowed to go to your leader about issues. You weren't allowed to like talk amongst yourselves about it. And so it's this weirdly isolating thing where you go to them and they'll talk you out of it or shame you for it.
Yep.
But they don't want you like spreading ideas.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
In other life aspects I'm currently doing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yep. Yep. So I don't know, but there's just this, you know, I will reference my cult sometimes, especially among people who don't have any connection
You
to.
never shut up about your cult.
Really?
I'm just kidding. No,
I
I'm
was
totally
I was
kidding.
like, really? I think I used to maybe.
No. I think I bring it up more than you bring it up.
I mean, it's an interesting tidbit to say, oh, I was in a cult and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then people are like, wait, say more about that.
Yeah.
I actually, because people have been like, was it really? Because I'll say, well, it's just a really extreme version of evangelicalism. And I don't know. Like, I mean, I, again, looked up, like, the Merriam-Webster version of what is a cult, and it just says, like, a religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious, great devotion to a person, idea, object, movement, or work.
Great devotion to an idea.
And I've talked about it, and people are like, oh, well, isn't that just like any religion? And I'm like, kinda, maybe, you know, but I think it depends, and I think it comes down, in my view anyway, the way I talk about it is about agency. So you can belong to a group and not feel like you have no power within it. Where I think that the group I was part of, it was about submission and hierarchy, and you don't have choice. There's a big emphasis on seeking counsel. And so, but because it was patriarchal, I would kind of have to like ask permission to do things from these young dudes who were like years younger than me, who had been put in leadership positions because there just weren't enough guys. And so I think it a lot of times comes down to like sacrificing agency for the greater good. But like the thing about it is, I guess what I wrote here was that, so you align yourself with ultimate power, which is what Christianity is, or like evangelicalism is. Like, God is mighty and powerful, so submit to him or worship him. But there's like no exchange or conversation. Like, it's just, this is what it is. End of story. There's no agency or individuality. You might have individuality in the sense that you're different, but you're not really supposed to, like, there's no tall poppies unless you gain power and are approved by the leadership. And the main thing that occurred to me after our conversation last week was that there's no evolution, which I was like, oh, because you're supposed to be a duplicate. You know, you don't ever change. You're always going back to the main authority, which is the Bible or the first century church or whatever. And you don't ever, like, there are no mutations in the gene, you know?
Yeah, that's the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms.
Yeah.
Well, the Founding Fathers said we should have this right. Founding Fathers probably would shit their pants with the technology of guns today.
Yeah. Put an AK-47 in Thomas Jefferson's hands and he would have something else to say.
Like, he would be like, oh shit, like, send me back to England, I'm going to kill everyone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
I wouldn't say that, but you know what I mean? Like,
I think that he would, I mean, I think most of the Founding Fathers would be like, oh, we need to, just like in the, I should know American history more than this, but you know, when they're like, we can't seize no quarter or whatever, like the soldiers can't just seize your land for no reason, except in XYZ instance. And I feel like they would make XYZ instance in the bear arms thing, you know? They would be like, here are some exceptions.
it has to be a, like, barrel loader.
Yeah.
A gun that, a Minuteman. Like, you shouldn't be able to shoot more than one round a minute. That's what they're at.
Yep.
Like, yeah, no.
Yeah. But I just thought that was really interesting because the whole thing about traditionalism and conservatism is don't ever change anything. And we had a yearly conference where the stated purpose of the conference was the older generation needed to make sure that the younger generation
Wasn't fucking it up.
Yeah, didn't veer from the path.
It's like that one random ass, I think it's Shel Silverstein, the guy that has like flower hair, and he like walks into a group and they all point and laugh at him because they all have like bald heads. Like they shaved it, so he goes and shaves it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're and growth would be, you have to grow into a copy of the original. Even Jesus is like the definition of the second person of the Trinity, which is very religious language, but Jesus is the visible image of the invisible God. Yes, go ahead.
The Holy Trinity, it's like a triangle. Three-dimensional triangle is like a pyramid. The pyramid scheme. The pyramid scheme. Religion's a pyramid scheme, is what I was getting.
And it basically is, because a pyramid scheme is where there aren't enough resources to possibly fulfill the promise of what it's offering. And there isn't enough power to go around, which is definitely, at least evangelical Christianity. Yeah.
Anyway. Sorry. I
No,
derailed us to make a joke.
That's all good. Sorry, I feel like I'm being kind of serious. But because I feel really strongly about this.
Yeah.
But also I'm like kind of sick.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't, some like jokes like go over my head and I'm like, I bet that's very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was my biggest, when I was thinking about this, I was like, oh, you don't evolve. And that's where like progressive, that's the fundamental difference between conservatives and progressives is conservatives feel like they cannot evolve. Ironically, they demonize evolution in general, but they cannot ever change because they always have to look like the original, which is Jesus. Where actually, I think the true, like the version of Christianity that I still kind of buy into is actually that God changes a lot throughout the Bible. Like there's like, way back in...
He's a burning bush at one point.
Yeah.
And then...
burning bush.
Yeah.
But it's like, way back in ancient early story time, the commands were about how to take slaves and be humane to them. And then later on, he's like, oh, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. And so it's always a tick forward. And you see God doing that with, like, polygamy was totally fine in the Old Testament, regardless of what people want to tell you. In the New Testament, they're like, maybe just have one wife at a time, And so the version of Christianity I buy into is that the Bible is an arrow and that there's recorded up until, mid-1st century. But that arrow's been going in a direction for a very long time. And so where would that story be now if that arrow had continued in the same pattern as the Bible laid out? And so it's not about going back to the 1st century. It's following forward in the pattern of like what we're like human rights, expansive thinking, inclusion,
Yeah.
So
You're being very serious tonight. I thought it was
That's okay.
I was
I
like,
need you to make me not be serious because I'm like, I get more serious when I don't have energy, and I'm just like I said, I'm kind of sick.
No, your view of religion as an arrow or like a path is like IKEA instructions, not a blueprint.
Yeah.
No.
I like it.
There's room for interpretations of what that guy's face says.
Yeah, and then the whole thing falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's when my evangelical friends listen to this, they're gonna be like, "And that Drew boy, he was right, and if you don't follow the directions, the shelf will fall down.
Yeah,
and it won't be useful to you."
And I'll see you in the next slide.
Yeah. So I think those are my main. I watched some interviews with Sarah Silverman this week, and she said there's a big difference between the liars and the lied to. And I think that we know a lot of liars in our culture, and we know a lot of people who are kind of the worst, but only because they believe the lie and they've been lied to.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think you can tell as you engage in conversation with people if they're trying to lord themselves over and doing it because they want power, or if they're just afraid. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, so do you have anything else to say about any of this? Oh, I think my main thing written right on the bottom was assimilation or death.
And I want to go back up to the top.
Yeah.
The who decides.
Yeah.
That was one that I wanted to talk about, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's
No,
anything.
go for it, yeah.
I don't know, I don't know who decides. Then we could talk back to about the democracy part of it. It was I don't think one person should have that say, and that goes back to the the evolution of I always want to hear that naysayer so I can get their point of view, so that we can work on a compromise. Because one of the biggest thing that I hate is when people minimize my concerns. I'm like, no, this is the most important thing to me right now, and you're saying it doesn't matter at all. That isn't good. So who decides is I think that needs to be more of a group, and it shouldn't be a group think. It a true democracy.
Yeah, hierarchy doesn't really work unless the leader acts as more of a host than a dictator.
So this is a quote that was on some high school. I was on not the honor society, but this leadership group. I don't remember what it was, but it was the quote was, "A good leader is far enough ahead to inspire, but close enough to relate."
Yeah.
And it's the whole chariot thing, whereas a leader doesn't have you carry them. If you have a cart, the leader's not sitting on the cart telling you what to do. The leader is in the front helping you pull the cart.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what a good leader does. And I really internalized that when I was a senior in high school or junior, whenever I saw that, and I was like, yeah, because that's always how I've been. Is I was the captain of my football team. I was a leader by example. It's words don't mean shit unless you do.
Yeah.
So why even say the words if I'm just gonna show you I live the words I speak kind of thing. So who decides shouldn't be the person sitting on the cart.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be the person sitting in the back while my minions kill you and you have the pleasure of dying for Thanos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother topic of true democracy is I think that a two-party system is wrong for America. But the way I think a fix would be, I've talked about this with other people, the election should be however many candidates, more than 2, it should be, let's say 16. 16 candidates, you all vote. The person who had the least amount of votes gets eliminated. Everybody gets to vote again for those 15. Lowest gets eliminated. Everybody votes for those 14. Lowest gets eliminated. Everybody votes for those 13. So you can never say your vote didn't count or didn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's if your person lost, you're well, shit, I should have advocated for them more. So now let's go back to okay, well, that didn't work. Well, now I have these options. Now I know that because I didn't advocate enough for my person last round, I need to advocate for this person this round so they don't lose. And then we vote again.
Yeah.
So that way you have a true democracy.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, your person isn't going to win, but you at least get a say every single time. Whereas, like, I don't feel like I'm wasting my vote for a third-party candidate who then comes out and says, don't vote for me.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think that would work if, I mean, it's hard enough to get Americans to vote anyway.
Well, that's why you make voting a national holiday.
Make it a national holiday and make it online. And I understand that there's a lot of hacking issues that would have to be taken care of. But
Well, Florida, you can vote by email. As long as you say you got hit with a hurricane.
Yeah.
Anyway. No, and that's not what we're talking about.
But there are ways to make it happen.
Yeah, no, there's an issue with our election system. Mm-hmm. But again, it doesn't say that the person that is in charge should be the one that makes the decision. Like, we, the people, should be able to decide.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost like well, I was, of course, on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Twitter, and people were like, who says that those coastal people should tell us in North Dakota what to do? And I was like, they're not trying to tell you what to do. They're just making sure that you in North Dakota aren't restricting them from doing what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And that's what, like, it should be, is like to protect the right of the people underneath and to create equality instead of enforcing hierarchy. Which I think actually there's a non-evangelical version of Jesus, that says, you'll do greater things than I have done. When I'm gone, you will do greater things than this.
That's like also being like a leader and a teacher is like, if I'm teaching you and at the end you're not smarter than me, I've failed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're teaching them how to learn or giving them tools and resources.
You're not duplicating yourself. You're initiating, you're fostering growth is how it should be.
Yeah. And that's why, like, Aristotle and Socrates aren't the same.
Right.
They took ideas, or even like Einstein took Newton's ideas and expanded them. Mm-hmm. And that was a good thing. Mm-hmm. Not like, oh, you didn't adhere to Newton's whatever.
Yeah. No. And that's, it goes back to me like wanting feedback or like critical comments is like, this sounds really pretentious. My senior quote was an Aristotle quote that was, the mark of an educated mind is being able to hold a concept without agreeing with it, or understand a concept without agreeing with it. So it's like, I understand where you're coming from. It's like, I don't agree with it, but let's work on.
Yeah. And I think I spend a lot of time in my life, and I know I've been very critical of evangelicalism in this podcast, but I spend a lot of time trying to explain conservatives to liberals, because they're like, oh, those hateful, uneducated people. And I'm like, no, that's not the people I know.
Right.
Like, they're good people who are trying to do the right thing.
Right. That's with this topic of like, well, tomorrow, by the time this come out, it'll be past Thanksgiving, but like tomorrow's Thanksgiving, it's like, do you think conservative families are like worried about their liberal uncle that's going to show up?
Probably. I'm trying to think back to, no, what they're doing is praying for him.
Fair.
Because I'm trying to think back to my experiences of like being where I was at, and then people would go home for the holidays and they'd be like, so how are you going to start conversations with your family at the dinner table? And how are you going to bring up the gospel? And, have those uncomfortable conversations for the sake of the kingdom.
Right. That was, my roommate was telling me today about how they're talking about Thanksgiving at work. And he's like, so I was trying to think of all the conversation topics. Like, I only think, I agree with abortion, but only when it's like, but I think the only people that should have it is the gay people. Gay people should only be allowed to have abortion. Yeah. Like, think about all those like super controversial things you can say, like just to stir the pot.
Yeah. I kind of do that. Like this will be a weird Thanksgiving for a lot of reasons, but I'm actually kind of genuinely interested in what people think. Mm-hmm. And so I will be like the question of what is God? Mm-hmm. Like, I really just want to be like, hey, Grandma, what do you think God is?
God is this turkey. Amen. Mm-hmm. Let's go. Yeah.
So I don't know. I like am legitimately interested in, because I do think that there's truth in the overlap, and that's where real truth is, when you get all the ideas together and what's that Venn diagram, and somewhere they're all going to match. Mm-hmm. So assimilation or death. That's I also just had a note that it's kind of funny that the Avengers ended in kind of a rapture situation. But that wasn't related to anything because it doesn't really work when you think about it too much. But I kind of thought it was funny.
The one thing I did like is that Spider-Man's spider senses were like trying to save him, and it made it worse. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that, but again, Marvel deaths are meaningless.
Yeah, I know. Well, and they intentionally told you that they were meaningless. In this one, because it's like, what, they're not, we know they're making another Spider-Man, we know they're making another Black Panther, like,
Black Panther's so good.
Yeah, I agree.
I've literally been trying to think. I think Spider-Man's the only Marvel movie I haven't seen.
They're making a new one. They'll be out right after Infinity War.
Yeah, I enjoy his Spider-Man. I think it's the most accurate because he's young. I think that's the most accurate representation.
And looks young.
Of my Spider-Man from like, I used to love Spider-Man growing up. Like animated series?
I always liked I liked Batman, Batman
the animated series? Batman Beyond?
Batman Beyond.
Batman Beyond was my least. No, the Batman.
I think it just was the one that I happened to be watching.
No, it's fair. Batman the animated series is what I grew up with. Like, I can talk Batman for days. Batman is my favorite series.
We'll do a Batman episode.
Okay, we can talk about that. I was gonna say Batman's my favorite superhero, but he's not. Nightwing is. So, no, we can talk Batman for days because like the animated series, Adam West, like, so we never talked about like R.I.P. Stan Lee, but
Stanny.
Yeah, like
he's done so many good things. I wish I had a quote here from him.
Excelsior.
He had some
there
really
you go.
good.
Done.
Yeah, but he just had a lot of really good things to say about like people being assholes about comics and stuff, and how we should all just care about each other and respect each other.
No, and that's like, it was all over my Twitter, and I'm like, yeah, that's sad, but I've never had strong feelings of like when celebrities die. It's like, yeah, that's sad. Like Robin Williams died. That's unfortunate. I grew up with him. You know, like,
yeah, there are certain ones. Robin was one of that I really and Carrie Fisher.
And like Carrie Fisher, Prince, like there's those big names that like the only one that I've ever like legit got really upset for was Adam West.
Wow. Okay.
Because of my connection with Batman.
Yeah.
Because that was like, my dad and I used to watch Batman. Like my dad used to call me the Boy Wonder. Like, that was just so much of my life.
Yeah.
Whereas like I can appreciate how other people would associate that with like Stan Lee or Carrie Fisher or Prince or
I think that's
Robin
would be
Williams.
Equivalent to how I felt about Carrie Fisher. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So like I get that, but I also that's my whole views on death kind of thing. Yeah.
So
I think we wrapped up our main points.
We did.
Let's get to everybody's favorite segment.
Yeah. What's it called again?
Goodish, mediocreish, badish.
Goodish, mediocreish, badish.
Well, it's a work in progress.
Okay, so I did mine last week. So can you tell us what you've been watching lately?
So I watched Teen Titans Go to the movies.
Nice.
It's really good.
I heard it was good.
It's really good.
Yeah, and there's a cameo.
There's so many cameos.
Yeah, but he has a cameo.
Yeah, and it was like, Stan Lee, I'm doing my non-obvious cameo. And he's like saying he's Stan Lee kind of thing. So it was really funny. And it was like the day after he died that I watched the movie.
Oh, tear.
So me and my roommate were like, ooh, too soon. But no, Teen Titans Go to the movie is really, really good. Really fucking good. Because it's like, obviously it's a kid's movie, but it's like, there's so many layers to it where it's like, I as a 26-year-old was like laughing at everything.
Yeah.
There's also farts. I laugh at farts. Teen Titans Go, really good. I finished Sharp Objects.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I watched it like a month and a half ago.
My roommate and I watched the first 2 episodes and then like took like a month and a half, 2-month break. So we just finished it.
What you kind of need to do with that.
It's a slow miniseries.
Yeah.
It's slow, but it's good.
Yeah. I really, really liked it. I had like a really dark week when I watched it.
Yeah. That was kind of the end of my last depressive episode. No, it's fine.
That show got me on the What is God thing.
Really?
Yeah. That was that week when I was like, what? And it's not really connected. It just triggered something in my brain.
Yeah, that's a very triggering show. I legit saw the twist, the end twist. That was my guess at the first episode.
Yeah, me too. But then it had convinced me out of it by the end.
Well, because that's how shows work.
Right.
So like that was my first guess of who did it. Yeah. But no, it was good. It was one of those things where I was like, I didn't care about any of the characters necessarily, and that made it hard.
Yeah.
I also think that Kansas City Cop was kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it got so illegal with the medical records. I was not happy about that.
All about the HIPAA.
Oh my gosh, it was wrong. And also, he's a piece of shit because he's looking into this girl he's dating, like abusing his power. Yeah. What a piece of shit.
Totally.
Anyways, I watched Sharp Objects. The whole series was good.
Mm-hmm. I liked the how it portrayed flashbacks, like because it would just kind of pop in, but while she was moving throughout her day.
Right.
You know, so it wasn't like, and now we're gonna stop and play another scene. Or also, like, she'd run down the stairs and her sister would be sitting up at the top of the stairs.
Mm-hmm. It was really
just
creepy,
not just out of focus, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah, that is kind of how that works. Like, you know, like when you remember things, like I don't see things.
Right.
But when I am thinking about someone, it's like they're just out of the periphery in your view. So I thought the filmography at least was fantastic.
Yeah. I think I plugged this last week too, but I'm gonna always plug it. Is Heavyweight and Reply All podcast. I didn't know because we cut it short because I was like, I'm not even talking about what I'm listening to. Both from Gimlet Media, fucking amazing. Heavyweight's really emotional, like legit cry almost every episode.
Okay.
And then Reply All's like about the internet, and that can get. They say it's a podcast about the internet, but it's very random. Mm-hmm. But that can get from being some like heavy emotional stuff to really, really fucking funny stuff.
Yeah.
And I like almost cried at the last episode of Heavyweight, and then I listened to Reply All, and I was like laughing at their yes, yes, no. Like they have different segments.
Yeah.
And it's just like so funny. Yeah. It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. So those are my two beyond goodish podcasts that I'd recommend. So I also watched Suburbicon with Matt Damon, and it is not at all what I expected it to be.
Really?
Not at all.
Okay.
It was a very, very, very simple plot. Like super like, this is what you think the movie's about? Because that's what the movie's about. But then there was like the subplot.
Kind of like Matt Damon as a person.
Kind of. But it was directed by George Clooney.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, it was well shot. It was very, I mean, it was a good movie. It wasn't like the best thing I've ever seen. It just was like, it was good. There was like this sub background plot, like the things happening in the background. Is like very racially driven. Like it's Suburbicon, and I made a joke to my roommate. And I was like, it looks like, because it starts with like this ad for Suburbicon, like oh, the convenience of the big city, but at the convenience of the small town, like, you know, suburbia. And I was like, it looks really white. And the very first thing that happens is this black family moves in, because it's set in like the 50s or 60s. So it's like,
there it is.
There we go, integration. You know, it's like this background plot the whole time, and they talk about how all these bad things have been happening in the suburbs since this black family moved in, but really it's the white neighbors across the street are the ones causing all the problems. And like all this shit, and it's like this racial tension built in over a very simple plot. So that's why I was like, it's better than mediocre, but it's not great. I don't know.
I gotcha.
It's worth a shot. It's only like an hour and 40.
Okay.
It's pretty good. I watched Power Rangers.
Nice.
It was very mediocre.
like old Power Rangers?
Nope, the new movie. The new movie.
Interesting.
It was very mediocre. It's a good setup movie. Like they set up the Green Ranger really well. Because like Rita is the Green Ranger in the movie, and like Goldar is a nice adaptation. Like they take liberties with the adaptations of some of the characters and like that kind of stuff. But I don't know, it was good. Yeah. It was, again, I don't get super nostalgic. Right. So like it hit some of those like, I get this reference. Like I remember the original Goldar. I remember the clay people, like the putties, like, you know, the bad guys, and like Rita and like Tommy, and you know, like all these like little things that like I remember. I know, like it's the familiarity of it, but it was good. Yeah. It wasn't great.
I wasn't allowed to watch Power Rangers when I was a kid. I loved it, but then they said it made me violent. So I wasn't allowed to watch it anymore.
Well,
It's one of my first great losses in my life.
it's true. You're the most violent person I know. Yeah, so I watched that. And then I've been binging cooking shows on YouTube. I watch a lot of cooking shows on YouTube. Like,
do you watch the Great British Bake Off?
I don't, but it's one of those things that I would.
I've seen like one episode.
Again, it's more of an episodic thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I don't like a lot of episodic
It's like
things.
nice chopped.
Yeah, I understand the concept. I've watched some episodes and I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it, but
Yeah.
I don't take time to watch that kind of stuff because, I don't know. It's one of those things I would watch. I'd happily watch it if somebody put it on.
Sure.
But I watch like cooking shows when I work out for some reason.
Yeah.
So like whether it's like Binging with Babish or Chef John from foodwishes.com. Those are two of the best, but that's not what I'm talking about. Because I just found Sam the Cooking Guy.
Okay.
And it's like, he used to be a TV personality, I think. And it's a mediocre show because it's like, the videos are short and there's simple recipes, but I don't like the host. He lives in San Diego and you can tell he's been like a professional chef or like, he rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
But there's times where he's like super relatable and then there's times where he's like a douche.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying it's mediocre. But I've been watching a lot of his stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the end of my mediocre stuff.
Okay. Did you watch anything badish?
I did. Spring Breakers
Oh no. Okay.
with James Franco and Miranda. Oh, I can't think of her name.
I don't know.
She's
I'll
a
look it
famous Disney star. You're looking up. I'm
I'm looking it up.
About.
Go ahead.
So it's about these 4 girls that go to spring break, whatever. I swear to God, there was 10 minutes of plot in this hour-and-a-half movie, and there's an hour and 20 minutes of B-roll footage.
Ooh. Okay.
It
Which
was,
sucks because James Franco is like a decent filmmaker.
Yeah. I mean...
You know? I
Yeah.
mean, better than that.
Right. It was just 10 minutes of plot.
Vanessa Hudgens.
That's the
Selena
one.
Gomez.
Selena Gomez. No. I don't know.
Ashley Benson. Rachel
Did you-
Corrine. Those were the 4 girls.
Oh.
I can't count to 4 today, apparently.
No, yeah. So it was just not good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed, spoilers, how James Franco died.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the ending of it, but I didn't need an hour and a half of
Right,
B-roll
in between.
footage.
Yeah, I think I did not hear good things about that movie.
It
Why
was-
did you watch it?
So slow.
Was it just on or something?
The person I watched it with picked it.
Okay.
Hey, shout out. You're good listeners to this podcast. We've already talked about this.
Yeah.
But it was so slow for not
Nothing.
a dense plot. It was, again, it was one of those, this is exactly what you think is going to happen, and here it happened. With an hour and a
later.
half of
Yeah.
B-roll footage of tits and beaches and sunsets and money. Like,
I don't know who wants to watch that.
it's this is stereotypes. It's the frat boy that thinks he's more indie than he is.
I guess, yeah.
I don't know. Like,
But it seems like kind of a girl movie, you know?
it's very, like, the people that idolize that culture of spring break would watch this and be like, yeah, what we do actually does have meaning. Like, look at all these beautiful shots of the beach. Like, this is just where we're living our lives. Like, you know? It was so bad.
Sorry for
It
your
wasn't
loss.
even bad-ish. It was bad. I did
super
enjoy
bad.
it. I did
Real
enjoy
bad.
it. Again, spoilers. I really did enjoy watching James Franco get shot in the head.
I bet, yeah.
But it happened, like, off camera.
To be clear, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
He's a decent filmmaker sometimes,
Sure.
is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand. But yeah, that's all. That is a lot I've watched in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, I watched The Death of Superman animated show. But
Really?
it was like,
That just came out, didn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. It's the setup movie for the second one because, like, everybody knows how Superman dies. So.
Right.
Actually, the timeline was weird because it was, like, just after he started dating Lois.
Oh,
So, like, the internal struggle of, like, Lois finding out that Clark is Superman
right.
and he dies, like, after she finds out.
Boom. Done.
Yeah, basically. So,
Okay.
but yeah.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for listening to the Long Shot Parking Lot.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Long Shot Parking Lot. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, including iTunes, Podbean, and now Spotify. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter. If there are any topics you'd like to discuss, please email us at longshotparkinglot@gmail.com.